Ow! Greetings, YouTube. It's DecKrash, better known as Brandon, once again with another Terra Nova review. Late again, I know. But anyway, I did finally watch it. Just finally had gotten around to it. Been busy like crazy. And I was really interested in seeing what was going to happen with this particular episode, because I knew that the last one was going to be pretty hard to beat. Well, whether fortunately or unfortunately, they weren't trying to beat it. The creators of the series, looks like they weren't trying to beat it. And yes, there are some more mysteries that were solved. Not any, to my knowledge, that were made again. Now, before I go on further, I'm going to let everyone know from now on, my reviews are going to be spoiler heavy. So if you're watching this, that means either you have seen the episode already, or don't really care, and don't mind the Cliff's Notes. So with that aside, let's go into it. So, of course, the colony's still wondering what has happened with the spy that's supposed to be in their midst. Now, I thought that I don't understand why in the previous episodes they still weren't using the whole deal with the insect, with the dragonfly, but I think that I might have a conclusion on that after I explain how the episode goes. So the whole of Terra Nova is on lockdown. No one goes in or out without specific permission from Taylor and of course the higher ups in the military department, because they're trying to see if the Sixers are going to be making other methods of communication. They've got the transmissions monitor and stuff like that. It's kind of upsetting the doctor, Malcolm, and he and of course Jim get into another little spat about that. And so they're still trying to figure out, how are they going to communicate. Then all of a sudden they see, of course, these shining lights. Somebody's using light signals, like with a mirror. And then they find that someone in Terra Nova's written the signal. So Jim, who's been left in charge of Terra Nova after Taylor and several of the other higher-ups are gone, I thought that was kind of interesting yet odd. They never really go into a lot of detail about why Jim is the one who's left in charge, except that Taylor pretty much tells Jim, "You're the only other person aside from my little inner circle. You're the only other person who I can really trust." Still, I'm thinking, he's not military personnel. Why on earth are you leaving the colony in the hands of a civvy, even though he does have some mad detective skills? I just thought that was kind of weak, if you ask me. It wasn't so weak that it subtracted from the episode being any good. But I didn't particularly like that. But it worked well with the plot, so let's go with it for now. So anyway, they find these light signals that are being sent by the Sixers out in the jungle. They're looking out and seeing if they have any other kind of methods of communication. They notice somebody in the colony is communicating with them using the same little reflective light signals. So Jim and the boy who, Reynolds, excuse me, that's the one who's in love with Maddie, the middle daughter. Anyway, they go out into the colony and try to and find out that the signal is coming from a house that's still not completely built. They're getting Terra Nova ready for the next pilgrimage. The next people are going to be going through the time portal to come through to join the colony. And I get the distinct impression that the big climax of the season is going to happen when they call it the 11th pilgrimage. This is the reason why they call the Sixers, because they came in on the 6th pilgrimage. This next pilgrimage is going to be the 11th pilgrimage. Jim's family came in on the 10th. But I think that, judging from all this preparation for the 11th pilgrimage coming in, I think that's where the big climax of the season is going to happen. So they go to the modular housing. It's still not completed. Jim kicks down the door and he finds out that whoever was there had left a single drop of blood inside a jar of paint thinner. And so he tries to take the drop of blood. But of course, if you've seen the episode, you know who the so-called spy is, or at least we think we do. I'm still not voting that person is actually the spy, regardless of what they showed. And of course, the spy is none other than Sky. Dun dun dun. The girl who was actually kind of in love with Josh, and was actually helping him find a way to get his girlfriend from the future into Terra Nova. And they never really did wrap that up. We don't know if, because Josh was found out, if she's even going to make it to Terra Nova or not. So that's another thing we have yet to be revealed. Even this episode didn't reveal that. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. I'm going to try to stay focused. So anyway, we realize that this person who's been sending signals to the Sixers is Sky. Now, as to whether or not she's the actual spy, they develop the episode gives some fairly strong evidence that she is, but I'm not entirely sure. It could throw a curveball. So she runs off because she was using a piece of broken glass to communicate. It cut her hand. That's how the blood got into the paint thinner. Jim's unable to retrieve the blood, and he kind of twists Malcolm's arm to try to run an analysis to try to get samples of DNA out of that blood. And he has his wife run a scan on it, but the scan, because the paint thinner destroys red blood cells, the DNA is not exactly in any condition to really get a scan immediately. So the machine that they put it on, it's going to take overnight. Well, Sky finds out about this, and she, of course, goes and taints the sample, destroys it before the machine has a chance to read that it's her DNA. But the whole deal with Sky is this: you find out why she's helping the Sixers, and it begins with a conversation that she has with Commander Taylor before he leaves the colony at the beginning of the episode. And it's that her family supposedly died from this sickness that couldn't be cured. But you find out later that the Sixers have her mother, and they seem to have a cure for this sickness that supposedly had taken her family. So they're kind of manipulating her. Basically, you want to see your mommy get well, you're going to help us out. That's pretty interesting stuff. So pretty strong evidence that Sky is most definitely the person that Taylor's been looking for. Problem: Taylor and Sky are very close. Taylor's been sort of like a second father to her in a sense, and they talk all the time. This episode really kind of developed that somewhat. Even though it was in a brief bit of exchange, it was a very significant exchange. Now, as the episode shows various scenarios, the other scenario happens with Commander Taylor when he goes out to this area that you've seen in like the pilot episode. It's right by a waterfall where the rocks on the ground are covered with these weird mathematical markings. Well, you learn as the series progresses that these markings are basically made by his son. He's still continuing his work despite Taylor having destroyed it. He's continuing his work to try to get the gate to swing both ways, and he's putting those markings out there to taunt him, showing that he's getting closer and closer. Well, Taylor's going out and checking out these scribbles on the ground, and who should wander up to him but Mira. And so she kind of takes him along, handcuffs him and with rope, and takes him back. Tries to take him back to the Sixers compound. But of course Taylor is no pushover, and he manages to fool her into thinking he's trying to run away, and grabs a piece of a sharp plant and cuts the binds. Pretty cool thinking. Just shows pretty much how much of a tough guy Taylor is. It's showing like, catching me is not going to be that simple. And he pretty much turns the tables on Mira. And then what happens is that they suddenly find themselves being stalked by slashers. Now, this is an episode where the animation for the dinosaurs actually shows a whole lot better than it has been, especially with the slashers. Now, the interesting thing is these dinosaurs move so fast, so in the cases where the animation isn't all that good, I've noticed that they tend to show them in darker areas. Well, the animation is actually pretty good. It seems like the creators of the show have enough courage to show them present it in more light. And even though they were in the middle of a forest, so it was kind of intermittent light under the canopy above, the slashers came through pretty well, especially in the big fight scene in the climax of the episode with Taylor and Mira having to work together to fight against these slashers. It really shows through that animation was really pretty cool. I didn't see an animation so good since that little fight that Taylor had against that ancestral Komodo dragon, which that was also pretty good. Also, they used a bit more animation for the dinosaurs, involving another side story involving little Zoe and this baby Ankylosaurus that her mother had nursed back to health. Well, her mother and Dr. Malcolm had nursed back to health. They basically gave it a second chance at life by repairing some sort of damage inside while it was still inside the egg, and it hatched. And Zoe decided to try to raise it as her own, but they had to release it into the wild. And so that little side story just basically is another one of those awe moments, which kind of, I think, is made to kind of ground you into the fact that this is a show about family, and keeps and there's always something in each episode that's a bit more prosaic. For those of you who know, prosaic means everyday, as far as Terra Nova goes. To show that yes, this is a story about a family, and it's always been about family. It's always going to be about family. So that little side story about Zoe is a bit of a breath of fresh air, and it showed off some really good animation with the baby Ankylosaurus, especially with this one scene where she has to take it out of her arms, and he crawls out of her arms, and you almost swear the little thing was real. It was very well done. And then this big giant adult Ankylosaurus comes out of the bushes and seems to take it under its proverbial wing. Let me see. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything else here. Well, I think that's about it. Oh, and I didn't really expand too much on the whole deal with Commander Taylor and Mira, as they're fighting for their lives, to survive against these slashers. They get to talking and understand each other better, and begin to understand why, the hows and the whys, especially with Mira. You find out a bit more about her, is that she was an ex-con who these big wigs back in the 22nd century. These big wigs back in the 22nd century decided to manipulate things so that she could get into Terra Nova, so she could pretty much push that whole agenda of getting the gate to swing both ways, so they could rape that time of all its natural resources. And she's pretty much telling Taylor that your son's almost stumbled upon how to get the gate to swing both ways. So you're it's all for naught. You're going to be overthrown, and it's going to be too late for you. But they still have to work together, and they've reached sort of at least an understanding of each other. And so you get a lot of interesting conversation going on between them. None that really reveals a whole lot about the overall plot, but you get to at least understand Mira a little bit better. And for those of the people who've been watching this and want to know a bit more about Mira, this really reveals a lot. That she had a daughter, and that she was doing this so that her family could have a comfortable life. Despite the fact that she was and she was once a terrorist who was thrown into prison, and she was talking about how she was kind of running with the bad crowd, and Taylor pretty much tells her, like, you're still running with the bad crowd. And she's basically like, we'll see. So, there's a good amount of character development in this. And you get a few other little things, and it just came to mind, especially with Reynolds and his little romance thing. And for those of you who have not been watching, who have just been watching my videos, Reynolds approaches things in a very old-fashioned way. He's not really dating Maddie, more as he's courting her. And I'm talking about old style 19th, early 20th century courting. Declare your intentions, walk with her, talk with her. Very, very formal stuff. But also kind of, but it shows how the whole deal is that that Reynolds is kind of intimidated by Jim, and well, Jim is kind of an intimidating guy when it comes to matters involving his oldest daughter. So, but it's actually kind of funny to watch, and you understand that he's a really good guy, and I'm hoping that they do more with this, and maybe something happens that they run into a snag with that relationship, or something like that, something that will make this less of just something that's, oh, he's in love with her and is courting her, but where it'll throw some wrenches into that. And, this is only the first season, so we'll see. It's a story primarily about family, and families do have their little adventures, of course. So on the whole, you got some really good character development in this episode. Though it still kind of bugs me with that whole deal at the beginning with Taylor leaving Jim in charge. I mean, like I said, Taylor has this whole retinue of soldiers, and you're telling me, he has all these soldiers and other people who are much more qualified to lead that colony than Jim, and he leaves Jim in charge. That's the only thing I just could not suspend reality on that. Like I said, it worked to move the plot ahead, but a lot of people who watch this are really gonna have a problem with this, regardless of how they kind of explained it off with Taylor saying you're the only one I can trust. So that really throws a wrench in my score for this episode. I mean, I would have given this episode a good solid 8 out of 10 if it had not been for that, and that bucks it down about a point. And then, so it's more of a 7 out of 10, because despite all the other really good moments of character development in here, and especially the awesome CG that they used, they really did a great job with the CG on this one, if you ask me. Other sites might say otherwise. I'm just an easy to please guy. But despite all that, despite the good characterization, despite the great CG that was used to show the dinosaurs a bit more, showing the dinosaurs a bit more prominently, you still had that one thing that really kind of made things a bit hard to believe, with the whole putting Jim in charge. So that brings it down to a 7 out of 10. Still a good episode though, with the exception of that one thing. So I think that's it. For my thoughts on Terra Nova this week. And so I shall meet you again for the next episode. And as always, comment, rate, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Keep it civil as always. And so until next time, ladies and gentlemen, DecKrash, better known as Brandon. Stay lucky and stay blessed.